I didn't think I was the kind of person who could get lucky anymore. That's dramatic, I know. But last year was one of those stretches where everything that could wobble did. My job cut my hours. My girlfriend cheated and left. I burned through what little savings I had, pretending things were temporary. They weren't. By the time I started looking for a new place, I was down to a duffel bag, a mattress topper, and a laptop with a cracked hinge. That's when I found the listing. It was posted in a small housing group for our town, one of those upscale rural places that pretends it isn't rural. Think boutique coffee shops next to feed stores, expensive apartments surrounded by empty fields, people with money who don't want noise. The ad was simple: room for rent, clean, quiet, no drama, $300 flat, utilities included. $300 for a one-bedroom share in that building was insane. Studios there went for triple that. I assumed it was fake, but I messaged anyway. He replied within 10 minutes. His name was Daniel. He said he owned the apartment but traveled for work and preferred having someone around so the place didn't sit empty. Said he liked structure. Said that he'd had bad roommate experiences before but was willing to try again. We met that same night at a brewery downtown. He didn't look like a scammer. Mid-30s, clean-cut, soft-spoken, the kind of guy who folds his napkin instead of crumpling it. He asked normal questions: work, hobbies, how long I plan to stay. When I asked why rent was so cheap, he shrugged. Peace of mind. Money isn't the issue. Stability is. I should have thought that was strange. I didn't. The apartment was nicer than anywhere I'd lived before. Top floor, vaulted ceilings, quiet hallway, neutral colors, everything staged like a model unit. The first thing I noticed were the walls. Several sections in the hallway had slightly different paint texture. You wouldn't see it unless you were looking. The patches were neat, professional, but they were there. Pipe burst last year, Daniel explained when he saw me glancing at it. Insurance nightmare. Had to redo some drywall. He said it casually, like he'd rehearsed it. Then he went over the rules. He called them house boundaries. 1. No guests ever. 2. Don't tamper with the walls or utility closet. 3. Text if staying out past midnight. 4. Keep the place clean. He meant spotless. 5. No pets. And 6. If I smelled anything strange, it was probably the plumbing. Don't try to fix it myself. They weren't insane, just strict. I needed cheap rent more than I needed freedom, so I agreed. Living with Daniel was calm, to say the least. He was tidy, predictable, almost quiet to the point of invisibility. Some days I barely heard him. He worked from home, consulting, whatever that meant. His office door stayed closed most of the time. He never had visitors, never got personal mail beyond generic envelopes. No old photos anywhere, just abstract art prints you buy in sets. The fridge was organized like a diagram. Labels forward, expiration dates visible. If something ran low, it was replaced immediately. Sometimes I'd notice brands change, like the milk would be a different company than the one from the week before. I assumed he shopped sales. He vacuumed twice a week. He wiped the baseboards. He cleaned the walls. Actually, that's not true. He wiped the walls. Specifically, he would be diligent on the patch sections. That part stuck with me later. At the time, I thought he was just one of those obsessiveness freaks. Germaphobes even, or what my granddad would call one of them neat nicks. I didn't break the guest rule for almost a month. Not because I respected it, because I didn't want to risk losing the place. But one night, I met a girl at a bar downtown. Her name was Mara. She had this silver ring on her right hand, turquoise stone, slightly chipped along the edge. I remember because she kept twisting it when she talked. She wasn't from town, just passing through for a few weeks for work. We hit it off. I told her I had roommates, but they were chill. That was the first lie. We went back to my place. I justified it to myself because Daniel was out doing whatever he did late. When we walked in, she looked around and said, "This place is nice." Doesn't look like two guys live here. I laughed, said he was particular. We ordered food and flipped through streaming options. That's when we landed on a documentary. She and I bonded over our love for true crime, so it was a total pull that my Netflix account assisted. It was about an unidentified serial offender operating in upstate counties. The media called him the Vacancy Squatter. I remember joking that the title sounded like a rejected horror movie. The documentary said the killer targeted homes whose owners were on extended vacations. He'd break in, live there for weeks, sometimes months. The interior would remain almost untouched, except for subtle differences. Groceries replaced with different brands. Furniture shifted by inches. New drywall patches discovered months later. The theory of this killer was he would aim for sex workers. Several women in different counties would go missing. Those disappearances weren't immediately linked at first. One homeowner never came back from a supposed trip. Authorities are still looking to find who the killer is, but the documentary is more of a speculative hit piece than a conclusive case. After it was over, Mara and I debated all those killings. 8 is what they said. Are really linked to one killer or just separate incidents. Mara nudged me. Imagine watching this in a stranger's apartment, she said. I told her she was paranoid. She sat up and went to use the bathroom. A moment later, that's when I heard knocking coming from the hallway. I turned with a slight race in my heart to see she was tapping on the drywall with her tongue sticking out. Just playful. But then she asked after tapping again, "Why does that sound hollow?" I froze, remembering Daniel's rules, but oddly, it did sound hollow. Not like insulation, like empty space. Daniel's bedroom door opened. I'd never seen him move that fast. He stood there, face blank. Not angry, just blank. "Who is this?" he asked calmly. I started apologizing immediately, saying I thought he was out of town and wouldn't hurt to bring someone over. Mara smiled awkwardly and said she was just heading to the bathroom. She walked down the hall. Daniel didn't take his eyes off me. For the first time, I noticed something different about them. They weren't cold. They were calculating. I don't like unpredictability. It disrupts structure. I told him it wouldn't happen again. He nodded. "It won't," he said with a straight glare. Then he went back into his room. She came back minutes later. "Well, he's Mr. Sunshine, isn't he?" she whispered. To shake the awkwardness, I recalled that she mentioned about her love for vintage items. I told her I had an old pocket watch and told her I would go grab it. She smiled and took a sip of her beer. I excused myself and headed to the room. It took me a while to find it, but after digging from my drawers, I did find it. Returning to the living room, I froze midway in the hallway. She was gone. Her purse was gone from the counter. Her jacket was gone from the chair. I felt stupid at first, then confused. I checked my phone. No message. I walked into the living room. Daniel was sitting on the couch like nothing happened. "She left," he said without looking at me. "What?" "She said she needed to get rest, for she had work early in the morning." That didn't make sense. She didn't seem to... Dude, I'm gonna be real with you. Don't think she wanted to tango with your mango, if you catch my drift. That was the longest sentence I heard from Daniel. Didn't think he was capable of it, honestly, but after he let out a sigh and a shrug, he turned over to meet my gaze. "Hey man, sorry for cock-blocking. Some people avoid confrontation, so don't take this rejection too hard, buddy." I don't know why that embarrassed me, but it did. I texted her a couple times, to no reply. I didn't know her last name. I didn't know where she was staying. By morning, I convinced myself she ghosted. It happens, right? About a week later, I started noticing a smell. I was gone for work, getting overtime hours for 2 graveyard shifts, but when I returned to the apartment, it hit me like a crude awakening. It wasn't constant, just ever so faint, but noticeable when you walk in. I assumed it was the trash, then plumbing, then maybe something dead in the walls, maybe a rodent. Daniel's demeanor changed too. He was a lot more joyous, if that even makes sense. He was happy to see me back and asked how work was. When I asked him about the smell, he said it was old pipes reacting to the humidity. He said he would call maintenance since they had looked at it for him before. After I came home from another graveyard shift, the smell faded. Then it came back stronger, and I noticed a new patch in the hallway. Fresh paint, perfectly blended. I didn't remember it being there. I figured that's where the source of the problem was. The strangest thing happened. A woman approached me outside my job, mid-30s, tired eyes, holding a printed photograph. "Do you live at the Riverstone building?" she asked. I hesitated. "Sure," I remarked in a tired tone but hesitant. She showed me a photo. A man who looked like Daniel, but heavier, slightly older. "This is my brother. Have you seen him?" I told her I lived with Daniel. She went pale. "My brother's name is Daniel." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, my roommate too." She stared at me. "My brother hasn't answered his phone in 2 months." Something in my stomach shifted. I told her she must be mistaken. She asked for the apartment number. I didn't give it. She begged me to ask Daniel to please reply to her. She misses him. That, and something about their father is terminally ill. That night, I asked Daniel about it. He sighed like I annoyed him. "Family drama. My sister exaggerates. I've been distancing myself." He smiled gently. "Don't let unstable people shake you." I wanted to believe him, so I did. The smell got worse after that, thicker, lingering. Daniel started burning candles, cleaning more aggressively. Then one morning, he told me he was going to visit family out of state. He packed light and left quietly during the night. He didn't come back. A week passed. Another went. Rent was coming, and I texted him if he was coming back or he had left his half to pay me for rent for the month. The smell didn't fade. It grew. I called my friend and told him about my situation, how I suspect that my roommate just left me to rot. Asked if I could crash for a while, for the smell was getting to me. Between the sister showing up and Daniel disappearing, something felt incredibly off. I started packing. While pulling my bed frame away from the wall, I dropped my phone. It slid under a loose floorboard. I knelt down to retrieve it. The board lifted too easily. Underneath was plastic sheeting, duct tape, and a small object caught in the corner. Silver. Turquoise stone. Chipped along the edge. Fuck. My hands went cold. My ears started ringing. Just a thin, steady tone like pressure bulging behind my eyes. I didn't think. I stood up fast and hit my head on the edge of the bed frame. I barely felt it. I turned toward the wall behind my bed. I didn't know what I expected. Blood, stains, something obvious. Instead, it looked normal. Too normal. The paint was smooth, slightly glossier than the rest of the room, but only if you were looking for it. I stepped closer, pressing my knuckles against it. It didn't thud like drywall, packed with insulation. It echoed. Hollow. I pressed harder. The smell hit immediately. Not overwhelming. It was thick, sweet, close. Right there. Behind where my head had rested every night for the past month. I staggered back and gagged. My hand was still clenched around the ring. I ran out into the utility closet, which smelled faintly of cleaner. Shelves lined the back wall, neatly arranged bottles of bleach, contractor-grade trash bags, replacement light fixtures still in packaging. But lower down, tucked behind a plastic storage bin, were tools that didn't match the rest of the apartment. A hacksaw, a rubber mallet, a short-handled sledge, heavy-duty shears, none of them dusty, none of them old. I don't know what made me carry the hammer back to my room. I told myself I just needed to look, just enough to prove I was overthinking. The section of wall where Mara had tapped sounded wrong now. Too hollow, too thin. The first hit barely dented it. The second cracked the drywall with a dull snap. Dust drifted down onto my shoes. I widened the hole slowly, carefully, like I was afraid of waking something up. When the opening was big enough, I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through insulation first, then plastic. Clear plastic wrap, stretched tight against something behind it. For a second, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then the plastic shifted slightly in the air from the hole I'd made, and an eye rolled toward the light. It wasn't wide, it wasn't blinking. It was just there, clouded, pressed against the inside of the wrap, looking back at me. I remember standing in the hallway waiting for police, staring at that hole in the wall, and thinking about the documentary, about the hollow sound, about how she'd laughed when she knocked on it. It took them less than 10 minutes to arrive. I must have sounded hysterical over the phone. I must have made out from my state of panic, there's bodies in the wall. One of them knocked on the wall the way I had. The sound was wrong. They cut into it. The first slice of drywall fell inward like paper. The smell that came out made one of the officers turn away immediately. They found her first, folded carefully, wrapped in plastic, tucked into the cavity like insulation. Her hair still tied back the way it had been that night. The ring-size indentation on her finger was empty. I didn't see much after that. They pulled me out into the hallway, sat me down, and asked questions I could barely process. When they opened the other patch sections in the apartment, they found more. They concluded there were 2 bodies total. One of them matched the man from the photo the woman had shown me outside my job. The real Daniel. He'd been there the longest. The cavity behind my bed where she was placed. There were other patches in my room that they cut into. The insulation had been removed completely. The space was clean, measured precisely between the studs. No other bodies were found, but something was found. Lined with plastic already stapled in place, like it had been prepared. On the inner wooden beam, written in pencil in small, controlled handwriting, was one word. Soon. I don't remember throwing up, but they told me I did. They asked me how long I'd been living there, when I met him, whether I noticed anything unusual. I told them everything. The rules, the documentary, the sister, the smell, the milk brands changing, every small detail that had felt meaningless until it wasn't. They believe he killed the real owner first, took his ID, his bank access, his lease, his life. They think he rented the spare room to me to make it look legitimate, to help with bills, to have someone who could say, yeah, he lives there. An alibi with a toothbrush in the bathroom. They say predators like structure, routine, escalation. They think Mara disrupted something, or maybe I did. He left before finishing. That's what one detective told me. Left before finishing. I moved out that same week. I didn't take much with me. Most of it went into evidence bags anyway. I don't stay in places long now. I don't mount things on walls. I don't push furniture flush against drywall. In hotels, I knock on the walls, just lightly, listening. Last week, there was an article online about a home 3 counties over. Owners return home from a 2-month vacation. Minor interior repairs noticed. Several women reported missing in the area. Investigators believe the suspect may have unlawfully occupied the property for a short period. No arrest has been made. I don't read those articles all the way through anymore. I don't need to. They never caught him. He's still out there. And I was his roommate.